Good morning, students. Welcome to HashLearn. My name is Tariq, and the first session of the day I'll be doing for you today is the class on data sufficiency. Right? So this will be a class. We'll be discussing about the type of questions that we have in this topic of data sufficiency. What is this question type, and what is the meaning of data sufficiency? And we'll be looking at some of the latest question types and patterns from this particular topic of the examination. Okay, so if you look at the paper pattern of most of the aptitude exams, including banking or MBA, you'll see that in the mathematics part of the question, 3 to 4 questions are there from this topic. Okay, so let's first look directly and see what is the pattern of data sufficiency, understanding the data sufficiency question type. So this is a question that you can get either in quantitative or in reasoning, both, right? In the question type, what happens, the general format is that there's a question statement given to you. A question is given which does not have complete information for students to solve and find out the answer, and the required information is provided in the form of two statements, 1 and statement 2. So you can understand the question is different from the other questions that you see in the paper. The other questions in the paper have a problem given to you with everything there in the problem, and there are answer options below. You have to solve and you have to mark the correct answer. But in data sufficiency, our objective is something different. The objective is to solve the question, not to find out the answer, but to find out whether the question can be solved or not, and to decide and select the correct answer based on our understanding of the question. So once again, a question is given to you which is not complete. Some additional information is required in order to solve and find out the answer. That additional information is provided in the form of two statements and sometimes three statements also. Now our job is to explore each statement separately, try to solve the questions from each statement one by one. If the question cannot be solved by individual statements, then we can combine the information of the statements together and then finally decide whether the question can be solved or not. Once we have made that decision, select the answer options from the ones that you see. Now these are the standard options you will see in the exam. One is that if statement 1 alone is sufficient to answer the question, that means the question can be answered from the first statement alone. We don't require any data from the second statement. Whereas statement 2 alone is not sufficient. So from statement 1 alone we can solve the question, but not from statement 2 alone. Now that if that is the case, if that is our decision, then we'll mark the answer as 1. If on the other hand the question can be solved from 2 alone, statement 2 alone is sufficient. We can solve the question from the data provided in statement 2, but we cannot solve it from statement 1 alone. Then the answer would be 2, or sometimes it's answer option B in the paper. If both the statements 1 and 2 are considered together, that means we cannot solve by these statements alone, but when we join them together, then they are sufficient. So statement 1 alone is not sufficient, statement 2 alone is not sufficient, but we can solve the question by combining the statements together. Then the answer would be 3, or answer option C. Now these answer options can change with respect to different exams. The ordering can change. The options will be same. The order of the questions options can change. Now if either of the statement alone is sufficient, so 1 alone is also sufficient and 2 alone is also sufficient, that means we can solve from 1 as well as 2 without borrowing any data from each other. Okay, now then the answer would be 4. And finally, if we cannot solve the question even after combining these statements together, then the answer would be 5, that the question cannot be solved, right? The data is not sufficient. So you have to decide if the data is sufficient or not sufficient, and that's why these questions are called as data sufficiency question. Okay, our job is not to find out the actual answer in value, but to decide whether the data is sufficient or not sufficient. Is the data in statement 1 sufficient? and data 2 statement 2 is sufficient, or we can solve them by combining, or even after combining we cannot solve. Okay, now this will become more clear to you when we look at the question here. One workout question, we'll work it out together. Now look at the question here. What is the value of a 2-digit number? So there's nothing mentioned in the question, as you can see. It just says what is the value of, you can see here, what is the value of a 2-digit number. What is a 2-digit number? No idea. What is a 2-digit number? We have no idea. Let's say the number is AB. Now how can we solve this question? That is what we mean by the question is incomplete, and the data required to solve this question is given in the form of statement 1 and statement 2. Now statement 1 says the product of the digits is 72 and the difference between the digits is 1. So let's try this out and solve using this particular statement. Okay, right. So statement 1 is saying that this number is AB, the 2-digit number AB. The product of the digits is 72. So when you multiply A into B, the product is 72 and the difference between the digits is 1. Now we don't know whether it's A minus B or B minus A. So one thing we can say is that, it could be 8 into 972 or it could be 9 into 872. That's the only way you can multiply two single digit numbers to get the product 72. And you can see in both the cases difference between the number is 1. That means the number that we have could be 89 or it could be 98 also. There are two possible options, there are two possible answers. If we get two possible answers, we don't say that we have found the answer, because the question is asking you what is this 2-digit number. Now we can't say that this 2-digit number is 89 or 98. We have to give a specific answer. So whenever you're solving a data sufficiency question and you come across a scenario where there are multiple answers for one question, then that is not considered as an answer. So we'll say that statement 1 is not sufficient. You see, statement 1, I'll just put a cross here. Statement 1 is not sufficient. We cannot solve from statement 1 alone. Now let's try with statement 2. When you're working with statement 2, you will only take the information of statement 2, nothing else. It says here the digit at the units place is greater than the other. Now one mistake that students do while going to statement 2 is that they borrow the information that they have got in statement 1. That you should never do. What you should always do in the examination is consider the statements independent of each other. So when you start solving statement 2, you first understand the 2-digit number is AB and the digit at the units place, that means this number is greater than the other number A. That means it's just telling you that B is greater than A. And there are so many possible cases where B is greater than A and the number is a 2-digit number. Please remember, don't take the part of the question that you have solved in statement 1 when you approach statement 2. When you start solving from statement 2, start from scratch, otherwise you'll get the wrong answer. So if I look at statement 2 alone, it just tells you that B is more than A, and there are so many cases, that B can be more than A. For example, either number could be 12 or 13 or 14 or 24 or 25. It's so many cases in which the number in the units place is more than the number in the tens place. So what does it mean? It means that the statement 2 alone is not sufficient. We cannot solve the question from statement 2 alone. So statement 1 alone is not sufficient. Statement 2 alone is not sufficient. What if we combine the information of these two statements? Now from the first question we have seen, if you combine the information from the first statement, what we had got that the number is either 89 or 98. And from the second statement we had obtained that the number is such that the number in the units place is more than the number in the tens place. And that means we can cancel out 98. And that leaves us with only one answer, which is 89. And therefore we can say that by combining the two statements, the question can be solved. That means the answer for this question would be statement 1 and 2 together. statement 1 and 2 together are sufficient. So neither the statements alone is sufficient, but when we combine them together, then we'll get the answer. That is your option for the particular question here. So that's what we mean by a data sufficiency question. We don't have to find out the exact answer. What we have to decide is whether the question can be solved, whether the data given to us is sufficient or not sufficient. I hope you have understood the structure of a data sufficiency question. So what we'll do next is to look at question number 2. What is A plus B? And here that's the question, what is A plus B? And statement 1 gives you some information. 864A is divisible by 9 and 3B76 is divisible by 11. And statement 2 says A and B are consecutive prime numbers. So try solving this question and you can post your answer in the comment section. So what you have to post is answer. You write A if you believe that 1 is sufficient, and you'll post the answer as B if you believe that 2 alone is sufficient. I'm just writing in short here. You'll post the answer as C if you believe that 1 and 2 together are sufficient. You'll post the answer as D if you believe that either is sufficient. Either is sufficient. And E when we cannot solve. Neither are sufficient, not together. Okay, so A, B, C, D and E. So post this, solve this question. The question is on the screen for you. Use your pen and paper, work it out and post the answer in the comment section. Well, lessons, I hope you have done the question by now. So can you tell me the answer for this question? For question number 2, 864A is divisible by 9. So let's see here. 864A is divisible by 9. Divisible by 9. So David is saying that the answer is A. Let's see. Okay, divisible by 9. So what are the possible options? What could A be? Now let's understand here. The rule for divisibility by 9 is the sum of digits. 8 plus 6 plus 4 plus A should be divisible by 9. Okay, what is it? So 6 plus 4, 10. 10 plus 8, 18 plus A. 18 plus A should be divisible by 9. And 18 plus A will be divisible by 9 in two cases. One, if A is 0, then the sum will become 18. And second is when A is equal to 9, in that case the sum will become 27. And both of these are divisible by 9. The moment we see that A has got two values, we don't need to worry about B now. And I can simply say that statement 1 alone is not sufficient because A has two values. I cannot work with two values to solve this question. So statement 1 is not sufficient. Okay, so we cannot solve from statement 1. So answer option A is definitely ruled out. Okay, now let's look at statement 2 and see if statement 2 alone is sufficient or not sufficient. Now statement 2, what information does it give us? A and B are consecutive prime numbers. Now what are prime numbers? Numbers that are divisible by itself and 1. And if A and B are consecutive prime numbers, can prime numbers be consecutive? That's the question. Okay, now you see, consecutive primes. If we talk about prime numbers and we start writing down the prime numbers, you'll see the first prime number is 2, and then we have 3, then 5, then 7, and then 11 and 13 and so on. And you see that 2 and 3 are consecutive. So A and B are consecutive prime numbers, so 2 and 3. Now, can any other set of prime numbers be consecutive? No chance at all. Because if you take any other two numbers which are consecutive, one of them will be even. And no other even number other than 2, except 2, no other even number can be prime. 2 is the only even prime number. That means if you are saying that A and B are consecutive prime numbers, they have to be 2 and 3. And that means the sum of A and B is 2 plus 3, 5. It could be that A is 2, it could be that B is 2. So it does not matter. The sum is 5. 2 plus 3 is 5. So we can solve from statement 2 alone, and therefore the answer for this question would be that 2 alone is sufficient. Question number 2, the answer is B. 2 alone is sufficient to solve the question. Okay, so you have to be very careful while solving these kind of questions, because if you don't consider two possible values for A, you will not get the right answer. So question number 2 we have done. Let's move on to question number 3 and see what is there in question number 3. So this is the age based problem and it's a ratio also. So let's see what is the age of Ram. The question is what is the age of Ram, and we have no information about Ram, so that information that is required to solve the question is provided to you along in two different statements, statement 1 and 2. So try solving the question from statement 1 first, and then from statement 2, and then post the answer in the comment section. Let's read statement 1 together and see what is there in statement 1. The average age of Ram and Mohan is 20 years. The average age of Mohan and Amit is 22 years. And the average age of Amit and Ram is 18 years. So we have the average age of Ram and Mohan given to us, average age of Mohan and Amit given to us, and average age of Amit and Ram is also given to us. Using that, can we find out the age of Ram? That's the first statement. And second one, the ratio of Ram's and Mohan's present age is 3:5, and after 5 years their average age will be 25. So that is statement number 2. So can we solve this question from statement number 2? So try from statement 1 and try from statement 2, and then combined you can see whether you can solve the question or not. So what is the answer for question number 3? Try it on your own and post the answer in the comment section. What will be the answer for this question? What is the age of Ram? Again, you'll post the answers: A, if statement 1 alone is sufficient; B, if 2 alone is sufficient; C, if both together are sufficient; and D, if either alone is sufficient; and E, if we cannot solve the question even after combining the two statements together. Question number 3. Let's look at this question. Okay, so let's try with statement 1 first. What is statement 1? Statement 1. The average age of Ram and Mohan is 20. So if the average age is 20, then total age of Ram and Mohan will be 2 into 20, that is 40. The average age of Mohan and Amit is 22. Mohan and Amit. Then the total age of Mohan and Amit will be 2 into 22, which is equal to 44. And the average age of Amit and Ram is 18. Amit and Ram is 18. So total age will be 2 into 18, 36. So we have 3 variables here and 3 equations. So definitely we can solve the question. Again, I told you in data sufficiency we don't have to solve and tell exactly what is the answer. If we can decide that this data is sufficient, that's all. No need to solve. So how do we know that this is sufficient? Because there are 3 variables here, A, M and R, and for 3 variables there are 3 equations given to us. So 3 equations and 3 variables is sufficient. So statement 1 alone is sufficient to solve the question. We will not waste time calculating and finding out the age of Ram. So, okay, let's go to statement 2. Let's look at statement 2. This is the difference between problem solving questions and data sufficiency questions. And in data sufficiency, we don't actually solve and find out the exact answer that is there, but rather we have to just see whether the answer can be obtained or not. Let's look at statement 2. The ratio of Ram's and Mohan's present age is 3:5. So Ram and Mohan's present age is 3:5. And after 5 years, the average age will be 25. After 5 years. So let's say this is 3x and 5x. And after 5 years, if we calculate this after 5 years. So if Ram's age is 3x right now, after 5 years it will be 3x plus 5. And in Mohan's age right now is 5x. After 5 years it will be 5x plus 5. Okay. Now the average age is 25. That means total age will be 2 into 25, 50. That means we can find out this 3x plus 5 plus 5x plus 5 is 50, and that means we can solve and find out the value of x. And once we know the value of x, we can find out the age of Ram. That means statement 2 alone is also sufficient. So what will be the answer then? The answer would be D, that is both either statement are sufficient. Either is sufficient. So we can solve the question from statement 1 alone, and we can solve from statement 2 alone. So either is sufficient. That is your answer for question number 3. So here we have seen the third question. Let's move on to the fourth question now and see what is this question about. Okay, so this is from one of the latest papers. So B invested some amount of his saving in PPF account in November. Find the amount invested by B in PPF account. And for that we have two statements. Since we have a lot of working to be done here, I have given the question on this side. So look at this statement here, statement 1. Okay, amount invested by B in PPF is 62.5% less than amount spent by B in April, while difference between amount spent by B in November and April is rupees 16,000. Okay, so B invested some amount of his saving in PPF in November. Find the amount invested by B in this PPF account. And first one says amount invested by B in PPF is 62.5% less than amount is spent by B in April, while difference between amount spent by B in November and April is 16,000. So can we solve from this statement alone or not? Let's see here. So 62.5% less. What is 62.5%? We see here 62.5%. 62.5% is equal to 3 by 8. 5 by 8. Now 1 by 8 is 12.5%. In percentage we have discussed this earlier, that fractions and percentages go together. So 1 by 8 is 12.5%. 3 by 8 is 37.5%. 5 by 8 is 62.5%. and 7 by 8 is 87.5%. So we should know these values, and that if you know them, then it's easy for us to calculate and tell the answer. So let's here work out for the first part of the question here. The amount invested by B in PPF is 62.5% less the amount spent by B in April. So let's say amount spent in April be equal to X. Okay, so amount invested by B in PPF is x minus 5 by 8 of x. 62.5% less it's saying. Okay, so x minus 5 by, this is the amount in PPF, or that means it is equal to 3 by 8 of x. Okay, so this is the amount we have got in PPF, and this is the amount invested in April, and difference between amount spent by B in November and April is 16,000. Okay, so November and April is 16,000. So x minus 3 by 8 of x. That's 5 by 8 of x is equal to 16,000. So from this we can find out and solve this question from this statement 1 alone. So statement 1 alone should be sufficient. And if you look at statement 2, you see that statement 2 is nothing but a repeat of statement 1, because now after we have got 3 by 8x here, 3 by 8x we have just now seen that 3 by 8x is equal to 37.5, and this 37.5% is repeated here. The difference is same, 16,000 here. So that means from both the statements we are going to get the same answer. So statement 1 alone is sufficient, statement 2 alone is sufficient. We can solve the question from statement 1 alone also and 2 alone also. So again the answer would be D, either statement is sufficient. Okay, that's question number 4, and now we'll move on to question number 5 and see what is there in question number 5. Okay. So what is the ratio of girls to boys in the class? So you can try this one yourself, a little simpler one. Girls is to boys, what is the ratio? The average marks of girl is 10 marks more than the average marks of the entire class, while the average marks of boys is 15 less than the average marks of the class. And statement 2 says the number of students in the class is 100. So I'll give you some time here. Look at the question. Basic question, average. What is the ratio of girls to boys here? To find out, use a pen and paper and try with statement 1. Can you solve and get the answer from statement 1? And then try from statement 2. Then we'll see can this question be answered or not. And you have to mark the answer as A if you believe that statement 1 alone is sufficient, B if you believe that statement 2 alone is sufficient, C if either statement alone is D, C if both the statements together are sufficient, D if either is sufficient, and E if both together are also not sufficient to solve the question. So start with this question here. I'll give you some time, work it out and post the answer in the comment section so that I can see whether you have obtained the right answer or not. Alright students, try it out and see what is your answer. Try solving the question, see what is your answer. What is the ratio of girls to boys in the class? The average marks of girls is 10 more than the average marks of the entire class, and the average marks of boys is 15 less than the average marks of the class. The number of students in the class is 100. Can we solve it from the first statement? Remember, we don't have to find the number of boys and girls. We only have to find out the ratio of boys and girls. Okay. Now let's see. Now what we are going to use here in solving this question is the allegation concept. Allegation concept is required to solve the question. Okay. Now in short, if I explain to you what is allegation concept, if you know this, let's say that there are two varieties of rice. Just give you a brief theory part here in case you don't know this particular concept. Suppose there's rice 1 and the cost of rice 1 is 60 rupees per kg. And there's another variety of rice which is rice 2 and the cost is 80 rupees per kg, and if a shopkeeper mixes them together, he mixes them and the mixture is costing 72 rupees per kg. I'm just giving an example in addition to this question. Let's just understand that if rice 1 is 60 rupees per kg and 2 is 80 rupees per kg and the mixture of the two is 72, what is the ratio of in which the rice have been mixed? Okay, so let's see here. How do we solve it? By allegation technique. We keep one value here 60, one value here 80, and the mixture will go in the center 72, and 80 minus 72 is 8, and 60 and 72 is 12, and that gives you the ratio 2:3. This is what we mean by the technique of allegation. Now how can I use the technique of allegation to solve this question? Very simply, you see, Let's write down on one side girls and let's write down boys on the other side. The let's say this is the average marks of the girls. Let's call it G, and the average marks obtained by boys, let's call it B, and the average marks obtained by students in the class, let's call it C. Okay, so these are three values. Let's say average marks of girls is G, average marks of boys is B, and average marks of the entire class is C. Now what is given to you in the question, if you see here carefully, the average marks of girls is 10 more than the average marks of the entire class, right? So the average marks of girls is 10 more than the average marks of the entire class. That means that the difference between G and C is 10. The average marks of girls is 10 more than the average marks of class. The difference of G and C is 10. Now let's see what else is given to you. The average marks of boys is 15 less than average marks of the class. That means the difference between C and B is 15, and that's all we needed. No, we just need this value, 5 into 3, 5 into 2, so we have got the ratio 3:2. That is what the question is asking. That means statement 1 alone is sufficient to solve this question. No data is required, nothing extra is required. Statement 1 alone is sufficient to answer this question. Whereas if you look at statement 2 alone is not sufficient, because if you look at statement 2 is just giving us the number of students. So we say the total students in the class is equal to 100. From this alone, how can we find out what is the number of girls and what is the number of boys? So statement 2 alone is not sufficient, and therefore the answer for this question is A, that is statement 1 alone is sufficient. That's a very interesting question. Most students will not be able to solve and get the answer for this question, or they will use both the statements and then get the answer. The trick is that it can be solved within 5 seconds if you know the concept of allegation, and I explained to you separately what this concept is. What is allegation? Okay, now we'll move on to the next question of the session here. Let's look at question 6. Now this is a different type of question. This is not an ideal data sufficiency question. It's not even classified as a DS question. But if you look at the question, you'll see that it's more or less data sufficiency. What is here? Vijay can cover D distance in S speed in time T. He can cover the same distance with S plus 10 speed in time T minus 2. And he can cover the same distance D with S minus 15 speed in T plus 6 time. What can be found from the given data? Okay, so again it's like a data sufficiency question itself. What can be found from the given data? Okay, so data is given to us and we have to see what the data is sufficient to calculate which of the following can we find out. One, so we have to check each of these options separately, 1, 2, 3, 4, and decide can we solve 1 or can we solve 2, can we solve 3 or 4 or not from the given information. Okay, so let's see this question, and first I'll go to the next slide of the same question there, and first we'll work out the information given and then we'll come back to this slide and decide what can be calculated. Let's see. Okay, so here we have the information. Vijay can cover distance D with S speed in time T, which means S into T is equal to D. Speed into time is equal to distance. He can cover the same distance with S plus 10 speed in T minus 2 time. So if it's S plus 10, then time is T minus 2, but the distance is same. Distance is not changing, right? Distance is not changing. So S plus 10 into T minus 2 equal to D. Now he can cover the same distance D with S minus 15 speed. So when speed is S minus 15 and time is T plus 6. Okay, the time is T plus 6 and distance is same. So can we create equations here from the first one and the second one? Let's see. Multiply S into T, so we get ST, and we get minus 2S plus 10T minus 20 is equal to D, and remember D is nothing but ST. right here st. So what will happen with this now? This st and this st will get cancelled. Okay, so we can basically say that minus 2s plus 10t is equal to 20, and that is your equation number 1. This is your equation number 1. Let's look at this. Now try the same thing with the next option here. So multiply s into t, we get st plus 6s minus 15t minus 90 is equal to d, and d is nothing but st, so write down st here and cancel all this too, and we get the equation 6s minus 15t is equal to 90. So we get two equations here. One is let me work it out on this side. One is minus 2s plus 10t is equal to 20, and the other one is 6s minus 15t equal to 90. So multiply 3 in the first equation. So 3, that gives you minus 6s plus 30t is equal to 60, and 6s minus 15t is equal to 90. Add them, so this will get cancelled. 15t is equal to 150, or t equal to 10. Now substitute this t equal to 10 in this part here. Okay, so here we get 6s minus 150 is equal to 90. 6s is equal to 240, or s is equal to 40. So we get to know the speed and we get to know the time. Okay, so let's go back to the previous slide and write down what all we have calculated here. Okay, so we have got the speed is equal to 40 and time equal to 10. So using these two, which all questions we can solve, and we should know that distance is equal to 40 into t 400. Okay, so 40 into t 400. So time to cover 200 kilometers with speed s plus 10. Yes, we know speed is 40, so 40 plus 10 50. We can solve this part. Distance covered in t plus 6, that means 16, with speed s plus 10, which is 50. Yes, we know speed and time, we can calculate this. Speed by which a tunnel can be crossed in 2t hours. Okay, the 2t hours, that means 20 hours. So I know the time here, but I don't know the length of tunnel. The length of tunnel I don't know. Speed I know, but length I don't know. So we cannot solve can be crossed in 2t, speed by which a tunnel can be crossed in 2t hours. Okay, but then we can't solve this part. Okay, now fourth one, ratio between time to cover distance d, that is 400, with speed s, which is 40, that is 10. To cover distance d minus 5 with speed. Yeah, so we can solve fourth one also, because we know what is s, we know what is t, we know what is d. So 1, 2 and 4 should be the correct answer, which means the correct answer is this one. Now this is a very unique type of question of data sufficiency which people have not seen in other exams. This came in the IBPSPO 2018 examinations, a very new type. And if you see this question and if you don't know what has to be done, you may be confused enough to leave the question, whereas this question can be actually a very simple question. Okay, so let's see, this is question number 6. Let's try with the same thing for question number 7. Okay, same question, same approach. What is given to us is information. Two trains A and B cross each other in 12 seconds. When they move towards each other, speed of train A and B is 81 and 54. Length of train is 150 meters more than length of train B. Okay, speed of train A and speed of train B is 81. So let's see what has to be done here. So we have to find out the length of the trains primarily. That's the main thing to be done here, to find out the length of trains. So let me go to the next slide, work out this question for you, show how to solve this part of the question, come back to this slide, and then we'll see what all can be found out. Okay, so first thing first, speed of train from A is 81 kilometers per hour. So you multiply with 5 by 18 in order to convert this into meters per second. So 9 into 2 and 9 into 9. So we get 45 by 2 meters per second. Okay, that's one part done. Now let's look at 54. Speed of train from B is 54. So multiply with 5 by 2, and 2 will cancel 50, sorry, 5 by 18, whatever I'm doing, 5 by 18. So 9 into 2 and 9 into 6, actually 18 into 3, so 2 into 3, and that's 15 meter per second. Okay, so now we'll have to find out what is the equation. Since they are moving towards each other, that means they're moving in opposite direction. So 45 by 2 plus 15 is equal to, length of one train is x and the other train is x plus 150, and time taken to cross is 12 seconds. So let's write on 12 here. So 45 plus 2 into 15, 30, so that's 75 by 2 is equal to 2x plus 150 by 12. 2 will cancel 12 6 times, and 6 into 75, 6 into 5, 30, 3 in hand, is 450, and 2x plus 150, 2x equals 300, x equals 150. Okay, so x is equal to 150. So length of train A is 150 more than length of train B. So train B length is 150 and train A length is 300. So now we have found all the length of the trains and we know the speeds. Okay, so let's go back to the previous slide and write down these values. Length of train B is 150, length of train A is 300, and speeds are 45 by 2 and 15. Speed of A 45 by 2 in meters per second. That's already given to us. We just converted into meters per second. Speed of B 15 meters per second. Length of A 300 meters, and length of B 150 meters. Done. Which of the following can be obtained? Time taken by train B, we know the speed of train B, to cross a man moving in the same direction as of train B. Now we cannot solve this question because we don't know speed of the man. Speed of the man is required. Okay, this is not given, so we cannot solve this first part. Time taken by train A to cross a platform of half of its length. Yes, half of its length means we can calculate length. Speed of train is A is already known to us, so yes, we can solve 2. Length of train A already we have found out. Okay, and speed of another train C, whose length is equal to average length of train A and B. So yeah, the length we can find out. Length we can find out because we know the length of A and B, so we can just add and divide. 225 would be the length. But how do we find the speed? There's no information about speed, so we can't solve this. So 2 and 3, so it should be C here. This should be your answer, 2 and 3. So we can find out 2 and we can find out 3, and this is a very unique kind of question that you get from data sufficiency. Okay, so we have seen in depth understanding of this topic of data sufficiency. I hope you had learned something new. Okay, one more question is there. Let's work it out also. So this is, I think, the last question. I think it skipped out of mind. Okay, so two numbers A and B are given. What is A plus B? LCM of A and B is 44 times the HCF. So whenever we have two numbers, we can always represent those numbers as HCF into a number X and HCF into a number Y, where X and Y are co-prime. That means have no common factor. This is the part of the theory from numbers. No common factor except 1. Okay. So if we have two numbers A and B, we can always represent them in the form of HCF into X and HCF into Y, where X and Y are co-prime numbers that have no common factor except 1. Okay, what is also given to us is that the first part here is LCM of A and B is 44. So first understand this one. One more thing I'll tell you. LCM is represented as HCF into X into Y. This is how we write down the LCM of numbers using their HCF. So if I take the first statement here, and this is a sufficiency question actually, which of the following statements are redundant? You have to find out which of the statement is not required. So LCM of a number is 44 times its HCF. So HCF into X into Y is equal to 44 times the HCF. So HCF is cancelled. X into Y is 44. Since these two numbers are co-prime numbers, there are two options with us: 1 into 44 and 4 into 11. So there are two options. So now we cannot solve from 1. We cannot find out exactly what is X and what is Y from 1. But we have got an idea. There are two options only: 144, 411. So let's see what we have in statement 2. The sum of LCM of A and B and their HCF is 540. Okay. Sum of LCM. So LCM is HCF into X into Y and their HCF. That is HCF. That will be HCF itself. This is 540. So if I take HCF common, we get X into Y plus 1 is 540. And we know X into Y is 44. So HCF is equal to 540 by 45. 9 into 5 and 9 into 6. Okay, so 12. So HCF is 12. So we know HCF is 12. And we know X and Y are two options are there for X and Y. 1 and 44 and 4 and 11. So that means still we need some more information. Now look at the statement here. A by 10 and B by 10 is an integer. A by 10 plus B by 10 is an integer, which basically means A plus B is divisible by 10. And we know A is 12x, so 12 times x plus y by 10. 12 times x plus y is divisible by 10. And if you look at this case here, x and y, we know x plus y is 45, or it is equal to 15, because 44 plus 1 is 45, 11 plus 4 is 15, and in both the cases it's divisible by 10. So this statement would be of no help to us. We don't need this statement. This is not serving anything. And A plus B is greater than 150. Okay, A plus B is greater than 150. So A plus B is greater than 150. Now 12 into x plus y. And if you look at 12 into 15, in both the cases we have, so x plus y, 12 into 15, or we can say 12 into 45, and 12 into 15 is 180, and 12 into 45 is again a very high value. So here we are not going to get the answer from any of the statements, so then it should be E. Then the answer should be E. Okay, let me see here that this statement cannot be answered even after using all the statements that are there. So we are still left with two options, that x and plus y, either it's 45 or x plus y is 15. So this was again a question from the IBPS PO examination, very different, very unique, little time taking, but then the deep rooted concepts of number systems, LCM and HCF are getting used in this particular question example. Okay, so students, that's for today. We have seen the different levels of question of data sufficiency, some basic, some advanced, and what are the different varieties of questions that we have from this particular topic. The next class that I'll be doing for you from 11 o'clock will be on quantitative comparison, and that is where we have two values which we have to compare and find out which value is greater, which value is smaller. Give a comparison between different values. That's also a new type of question. So I'll be waiting for you at 11 o'clock. We'll be starting with the class, a very, very important class on quantitative comparison. So see you again, and thank you for watching the video.